Hi students, and welcome to day 6 of Unit 9 in Shared Reading. Today we will read the first part of Natural Resources and Workers. When looking at this passage, I'm noticing that this text is informational social studies. I also notice there are many subheads and graphic features. As we read today, we're going to find key details and the main ideas of each section. I also want you to pay attention and circle or highlight unknown vocabulary.
Extended Read 1. Remember to annotate as you read.
Natural Resources and Workers by Alexandra Hanson Harding. Throughout the history of the United States, people have often moved to different states for work. Some states are able to create jobs and attract businesses because of their natural resources. People need and use natural resources such as farmland and oil, so jobs are created and industries grow around those resources. Two states with natural resources that have created jobs and grown industries are California and Texas. Agriculture, or farming, is a major industry that generates around $35 billion a year in California. Businesses that work with these farms also generate billions of dollars. Texas, like California, has a major industry that is based on a natural resource: oil. The oil industry in Texas has created jobs and businesses. Texas ranks in the top 10 areas in the production of oil worldwide, so the state needs many workers.
All right, so after annotating this section, I am coming up with a main idea. And I want to say some states are able to create jobs and attract businesses because of their natural resources. People need and use natural resources such as farmland and oil, so jobs are created and industries grow around those resources. There we go. My first main idea is done. We're going to continue to read each section to figure out the main idea. Let's keep going.
Oil workers moving a drill in Texas.
Early workers in California. In the 1700s, Spanish priests came to California to start missions, which functioned as both religious and farming centers. The Spanish introduced many different crops and irrigation systems. As a result, the agricultural industry was born, and California's need for farm labor began. Father Junipero Serra founded the first mission in San Diego in 1769. The Spanish priests established farms near their missions where Native Americans were forced to work in the fields under poor conditions. The missions also set up Native American settlements close to their farms so that they could supervise their workers as they also tried to convert them to Christianity. As a result, the Native American culture and way of life was disrupted. Over time, many Native Americans grew angry because of the treatment they received under Spanish rule. They staged several rebellions against the Spanish.
A painting of the Mission Santa Clara in the early 1800s.
All right, now I want to come up with a main idea for this section. I want to say the Spanish established the state's agricultural industry Thank goodness for spell check. But also disrupted the Native American way of life. Before we move on to the next page, what I want us to do is I want us to think about some words that we can look at later. Some words that I'm noticing right now are the word agriculture, as well as the word missions. That's something that I am going to go back to later.
California farm workers in the 19th century. In the 1800s, European Americans began moving west to California. Gold was discovered in California in 1848, and in 1849, the rush for gold began. In 1850, California became the 31st state in the developing nation. As the population in California grew, so did the need for food. As a result, the agricultural industry continued to grow. Among those who came for gold and then stayed to farm were Chinese immigrants. In the early 1860s, the United States hired Chinese workers to help build the Transcontinental Railroad. When it was completed in 1869, these workers flocked to California. They joined the already established Chinese farming communities. But in the 1870s, a depression forced European American and Chinese workers to compete for work. By 1882, anti-Chinese prejudice led to the Chinese Exclusion Act. Chinese people could not become U.S. citizens. No more Chinese immigrants could enter the United States. Instead, the United States increased the quotas, or the numbers, of Japanese and Filipino workers who could come to the United States.
California timeline. 1774. Native Americans work on huge mission farms. 1848. Gold is discovered in California. 1869. Chinese come to California for farm work after finishing the Transcontinental Railroad. 1882. U.S. government passes Chinese Exclusion Act. 1880s to 1906. Japanese start working on farms. Later, Filipinos come too. 1935. Workers migrate from Oklahoma during Dust Bowl era and take over farm work. 1942. Mexican workers come to the United States on Braceros program. 1964. Braceros program ends. 2014. California faces labor shortages.
All right, so for the main idea for this section, based on my key details, I've come up with Chinese workers came to California and became farmers, but faced prejudice in the late 1800s. Also, a word that I want to go back to later is this word right here, quotas. I'm not sure what quotas means, so I want to come back to it later. Let's continue reading.
20th century hardships. By 1930, the Great Depression, a period of economic hardship that lasted from 1929 to the early 1940s, forced prices for farm goods to drop. As a result, workers' wages dropped too. Many European American farmers, fleeing the severe droughts of the Midwest, began searching for jobs in California. These workers moved from farm to farm for work. They were called migrant workers. They struggled to survive because there were too many migrant workers and not enough jobs. In the 1940s, World War II began. During those years, the U.S. government forced California's Japanese Americans into relocation camps such as Manzanar, deep in California's desert. They were forced into these camps because the United States was at war with Japan and considered Japanese Americans as potential enemies. As a result, many Japanese Americans had their homes and farming businesses taken from them.
This photo shows Japanese Americans at the Manzanar relocation camp.
During the war, new factory jobs opened up, so many farm workers left the fields for factory jobs that paid better. But farms still needed workers. The United States started the Braceros, Manual Laborers Program. It gave Mexicans limited visas to work in California's fields, but it prevented them from becoming citizens. The program was controversial because many farm owners broke government rules designed to protect these new farm workers and instead paid them very low wages. This program ended in 1964, but many undocumented farm workers from Mexico and Central America who did not have official permission to work in the United States continued to work in California anyway. By 1965, mostly Mexican and Filipino farm workers formed unions. These are groups of people who come together to ensure that they receive fair wages and good working conditions from employers. In recent years, California has faced a shortage of farm workers. Still, few American citizens want to work the state's farms because of the low pay for hard work. So some farm owners rely on undocumented immigrants to harvest their crops. The need for farm workers and the debate about legal immigration is often in the news.
These protesters want undocumented immigrants, such as farm workers, to be eligible for U.S. citizenship.
Realizing that agricultural workers are valuable contributors to the state and national economy, California lawmakers are looking for solutions to support agriculture. Some lawmakers say the state should raise farm workers' wages. Others have suggested allowing undocumented farm workers the right to become U.S. citizens. The debate continues.
All right, now I want to find the main idea for this section. And based on what we have read in this section, I am going to say, due to the various events, different groups of people have become farm workers in California over the years. All right, so that is all that we are going to read for today. We're going to read the rest of this tomorrow. Now, your job is to go back to your presentation in the last slide to complete your vocabulary chart for today. Your vocabulary chart asks you to use context clues to find the definitions of words.